Well, this is an audience that Ed Martin probably needs no introduction here. Pardon me. Ed, so the thing I think about most with respect to Ed is that he is a fighter. And when he stood by Donald Trump in the 2016 election, all through his first term, and then through the past 4 years of brutal lawfare when many people fled and no longer stood by our great president, Ed stayed a stalwart supporter of Donald Trump, and he certainly needed that. The grassroots needed that leadership, and so we're so grateful for the time that Ed Martin spent as president of Phyllis Schlafly Eagles, and the time that he has spent as a stalwart supporter of Donald Trump and the entire America First movement. I'm going to read his bio because the DOJ is always changing its names for all of these different offices, and I get confused from one administration to the other. It's a very quirky thing about DOJ. Ed Martin serves as the U.S. Pardon Attorney and Associate Deputy Attorney General. He also served as the interim U.S. Attorney for the District of Columbia. Ed was previously president of Phyllis Schlafly Eagles and the Eagle Forum Education and Legal Defense Fund from 2015 to 2025, serving as Phyllis Schlafly's handpicked successor. Prior to the Eagles, Ed fulfilled roles in Missouri local and state government, as well as chairman of the Missouri Republican Party. It is my pleasure to introduce Ed Martin.
The phone rang on August 15th in 2016 in the kitchen of Phyllis Schlafly's home in St. Louis. And if you've been in her area, John and I spent a lot of time with her there. Around the corner from the kitchen was her office, and there was a phone there on her desk that she worked tirelessly. And there was a phone in the kitchen, and she answered the kitchen phone. And on the TV above, the phone's here, the door's here, the TV's up here, the table's here, behind you is the stove. Fox News is going with the sound off. And she answers the phone. And she says, "Oh, hello, Mr. Trump." And my side that I heard of the conversation was, "Oh, thank you. Thank you for remembering. Oh, thank you. Yes, yes. Oh, yes. Oh." And she laughed, almost, for Phyllis, a coquettish laugh, almost, not quite. It's hard to do that to Phyllis at her age and her bearing, but she was smiling the whole time, and the call went for 2 or 3 minutes, and I said, "What did he say?" And she said, "Oh, he called to say happy birthday." And I said, "Anything else? Are we going to appoint the Supreme Court? What are we going to do?" She said, "No, just his happy birthday." And 3 weeks later, 4 weeks maybe? I guess I can't do math. I was an English major in college. And I remember when Phyllis died, actually it was Roger that called me to tell me. And the book, The Conservative Case for Trump, was launching the next day. And she died on a Monday, and the next day I was supposed to fly to New York and be on Fox or somewhere and push the book. And I said to, sorry, it wasn't Roger, it was Bruce, sorry. I said to Bruce, I was crying kind of, and I said, "What do I do?" And he said, "Well, you do what Mother would want you to do. Get on the plane and push the book, and we'll figure it out from there." Because there was going to be a funeral, and there was going to be an Eagle Council and all kinds of things. And so we did. And by the way, the book made the New York Times bestseller list. I like to think my contribution was the thing that got us over the edge, but it might have been Phyllis. I don't know. And, but as a footnote, The Conservative Case for Trump, the book that launched in September of 2016, was because Phyllis Schlafly in May knew that if we got a book out from Phyllis Schlafly, it would hold the voters that would be told the guy is a liberal from New York, or whatever they'd say, right? Or however they would hit him. And so we were doing our part all along the way, planning ahead and seeing what was happening on the issues we cared about, on the people that we cared about, and understanding politics. There's never been anybody who does it like Phyllis Schlafly does and saw the field like she saw it. So 3 weeks or 4 weeks later, when Phyllis had passed away, and we had a funeral at the what's called the New Cathedral. For those of you out of town, I think our farthest person is coming in from Boston. If you haven't seen the New Cathedral, it was finished in 1908. I don't know, Liza says 1908, 1910. It's not that new, but the old cathedral was from 1820 or something. So, it's all relative. And Phyllis had been, John, am I right? Phyllis had been baptized in the cathedral, confirmed in the cathedral, married in the cathedral. And now the funeral mass of burial was celebrated in the cathedral, and Donald Trump came. And in his talk, it was before the mass, in his talk, and he met with the family, and then he gave a brief talk, he used the phrase, "she never wavered." She never wavered. And I've been with him now, now in my current position, I can't pick a number, but before this election, before the inauguration, I probably was with him 20 times in Bedminster for an event for January 6th and other things. And when John was there, one time it was John and I think Bruce and Andy, I would say, there's Judge John Schlafly, and he would come, and he would use that phrase, that she never wavered. It's how he remembers Phyllis, because she stuck with him when a lot of people ran for the hills. And he remembers it. He brings it up regularly. I'll say something about Phyllis, and he'll then turn to somebody else and say, Phyllis Schlafly, who that is? She was for me, and she stayed with me. She was for me early, and she stayed with me. She never quit. She never wavered. She used that phrase. And in the book that's outside, if you look, there's one, Phyllis Schlafly Speaks on Donald Trump. She wrote about him, all told, I think 60 plus times. They're all in here, about his positions, about his policies, about how he got where he was, about what the moment he was in, how he fit into the landscape. If you just read this book about what Phyllis saw with Donald Trump as a candidate, you'll understand precisely why she backed him. You don't have to listen to me or John or anybody else explain it. But at that funeral, when he said she never wavered, nobody thought he could win right then, right? He was going to lose. And then they hit him with in the St. Louis debate. It was the St. Louis debate at WashU right after the Friday when they dropped the Billy Bush video, and everyone thought, oh no, he's done now for sure. And when he won, he lived up to everything that Phyllis Schlafly expected, in my opinion. And I always wonder in heaven as she watches this, looks down on us, and I pray a lot to her. I ask her to help. I always say, please, Phyllis, pray for what's going on here and me and everything else. How she sees what's come together. Because in John, about a year and a half during the run up to the election, as Phyllis was talking about why Donald Trump was the right candidate, she was constantly highlighting the key issues. And we heard from Andrew some of them. American sovereignty, the necessity of the rule of law and limited government. Judges, we're finally to this fight over the out-of-control judges. Phyllis has been writing about this for 25 years as a crisis. The globalists, what has been exposed in USAID was the corruption that Phyllis was describing from about 56 onward. You mostly talked about the UN. People talked about the UN and what the UN did. USAID, it laid bare how corrupt this was. And on and on and on. There's examples of what Phyllis saw. But, in reflecting on how we got here and what happened, I remember an interview when Phyllis, John and Phyllis and I would talk a lot about the election, and it was the fall of 2015. And Phyllis announced to John and I, and John could remember the date probably better. She said, I think that's it. We've watched some of these other ones, but it's Trump. She said, it's Trump. I think it's time that we, announce we're for Trump. And John and I said, maybe we should talk to some of the Eagles and see what they think right now, because there's some of them that are pretty far out there for other candidates. And she said, okay, we'll do some calls. And she made some calls. And then, and then she came back and said, let's let it play out a little bit more, and the timing will be important. And if you remember, Phyllis endorsed Donald Trump on the Friday before the Missouri primary. And she was supposed to lose. I mean, Trump was supposed to lose Missouri because Ted Cruz had hired a political operative from Missouri, and they had Missouri locked down. They knew everything they were doing. They got it all figured out, and there was no chance you could compete in Missouri. Phyllis endorsed on Friday, and Donald Trump won on Tuesday. And inside the campaign, they said it was because of Phyllis. She didn't win by that much. It was because of Phyllis that she won Missouri, and because Phyllis was on Donald Trump's side and the message it sent. So this is the fall of 2015, and Phyllis she's writing about Trump and all these articles in this book, which I encourage you to read and understand and see what she was saying, what she was seeing and what she was saying about it. And she said, well, maybe it's time. And John and I were like, well, and then we're talking about the timing and we're seeing. And so a Friday, John, you remember this? A Friday during December, there was a young reporter for WND, World Net Daily. Do you remember his name, John? I can't remember his name either. I never can remember his name. I wish I could give him credit. Kevin Deanna. Kevin Deanna. Wherever Kevin Deanna is, I salute you, Kevin Deanna. He would call Phyllis, and he was constantly calling Phyllis. I remember one time she said, Kevin Deanna called, and I said, what did he want you to do? What did he want to talk about? This was a long time before that, and he wanted her to say something about Boehner and, blast Boehner. And for whatever reason at that time, she said, I told him, not now, Kevin, not doing that. So, but Kevin calls on a Friday around Christmas and asks Phyllis about Donald Trump. And what did she think? And she said, so she calls me and she says, well, I want you to know I didn't endorse him. And I said, oh, what did you say? And she said, well, I called him the last hope for America. And I said, I think that's going to cover a lot of the bases. The E word may not be necessary, but here's the inside story on that. When that story ran on WND and it was picked up by the Daily Caller and it was, sort of out there quickly, the South Carolina director, whose name is Ed McMullen, he went on to be the ambassador to Switzerland in the first Trump term. And Ed McMullen was in charge of South Carolina as a key state. And when he heard that, he saw that, he called Donald Trump and he said, we're going to win South Carolina now. And Trump said, what do you mean? And he said, I'm going to do radio and mail on that right there to all the conservatives in this state. Phyllis Schlafly called you the last hope for America. We're going to win South Carolina, which he did, by the way. And the whole time down that stretch to South Carolina, they used Phyllis Schlafly's endorsement as the thing that was the reason you could be for this, New Yorker who had been a Democrat some years before. So, it was an extraordinary thing, and Phyllis knew exactly how all these things came together. She knew exactly, a little bit like Trump, to be honest. When I see what President Trump does, and I see how he takes an argument and he frames it over here, and you wonder, why is that happening now? And you say, oh, and then later you see it fits together. Phyllis had a way of seeing down the playing field in the political battles and understanding where the opportunities were and how to lay that out and how to make progress. And the ultimate example of that is Donald Trump. And I think we're going to Ryan said we're going to do a Q&A, which probably makes all of you happier than me wah-wahing. But I want to finish with two quick anecdotes. One, I never gave a speech that Phyllis didn't tell me afterwards. She said, that was a really nice speech. It could have been shorter. Every time. Every time. I ran for Congress in 2010. In 2009, she backed me, and I gave speech after speech, did events every time. She said, excellent speech, covered a lot of great ground, could have been shorter. And now during the Q&A, after Q&A, she would say, that was really good. You answered the questions, but they could have been shorter answers. So do the best I can and try. But one time, Gwen Kelly from our staff came into my office. Phyllis was gone now. She'd passed. And Trump was, I think Trump had won. And she said she leaned against a door jamb, which is a door jamb that Phyllis used to lean against when she'd come in from her office. And she leaned there and Gwen said, I think I figured it out. And I thought, well, finally, Gwen figured it out. I don't know what we were going to cover here. But and I said, what is it? And she said, Trump and Phyllis. And I said, what about it? And she said, the two of them loved America. They love America so much. They want America for everyone. And if you think about what Phyllis did, her life, her legacy, what she built, the successes and failures she had, how she was, the happy warrior, it's an extraordinary expression of love for America and for American values and for the American Constitution and for the America that we are. And that's what if you now take that and say, and look at this guy, this president, and say, why do you do this? You know, the other day they said to him, I think his granddaughter said, did you ever dream of being president or something? Do you remember seeing this? He was on the golf course and he said, well, you dream of being president. Yeah, it's a big dream and it's great. He said, now you want to be a great president. What motivates someone? What motivates him to do what he's done and how he's done it and what he's survived and what he goes through? And it's a deep, abiding love of America, so much so that he wants it for others, for all of us. And that's what Phyllis saw in him. That's what Phyllis lived, how she lived her life. And that was the extraordinary part of what happened from when he went down an escalator until he was inaugurated the first time. And maybe more than we could have ever expected, the loss in 2020 of the election gave us this incredible second term where there's no fear, there's no timetable, we're just going to do the right things and we're going to do them well and fearlessly. And this president is leading us. It's an extraordinary time. And I'll just finish by an encouragement that it's you can see around you. I mean, they killed Charlie. They shot President Trump. They destroy our friends and neighbors, you know, the lawfare. There was even lawfare against Phyllis for years. Some of it still goes on. I mean, but this is truly an existential, it's a war for the future of civilization. And we're ground zero. And the best news for us is we got Trump as our president, and we have people like Phyllis who have taught us and continue to teach us and give us the direction to go forward. So it's great to be back. It's great I love everything about what's Eagle Council and all the Eagles. And so it's a thrill to be here. And I just am grateful and I thank you for all you're doing and encourage you to double down and to step up. 2026 is a huge election. Andy and I were talking, some of our cabinet secretaries, Bobby, Kennedy, under attack supposedly by some of our friends and allies. We've got a lot of work to do. We got a lot of fight. But remember, just if you can picture it, I love to think of it. They shot Donald Trump and he didn't give a speech later saying, let's fight. He stood up and said, fight, fight, fight. Amen. And so we will. Thank you.